There are a bunch of NFL teams who've been looking forward to Friday because that's when they get to make their first picks of the draft 2022. The Buccaneers, Bears, Colts, Browns, 49ers, Broncos, all teams on this list with second-round picks. The Bucs and the Bears actually have two in the second round. Vegas, Miami, Super Bowl champion Rams don't make their first picks until deep into the third round. This is CBS Sports HQ, presented by Capital One, and to look at what those potential picks might be, let's welcome back Danny Kanell, Rick Spielman, Bryant McFadden, and Ryan Wilson. Our Chris Trapasso has posted a second-round mock draft on CBS Sports, so let's take a look at some of these first-time picks. We start with Tampa Bay, picks 33 and picks 60. Let's start with 33. Nicolby Dean is who goes off the board for them. Rick, what do you make of that choice?
Nicolby Dean is a great football player. When you watch him on tape, he makes plays all over the field. Now, he's playing in front of a NFL defensive line, so they keep him pretty clean. And when I charted his tackles, a lot of it was what I call clean air tackles, which means he really didn't have to take on anyone and got to the ball, but he can find the ball. It'll be interesting to see. He's going to have to take on offensive linemen at this level. The other reason why I think he dropped, he is another injured player that did not run at the combine, did not run at the pro day, and you're talking about a linebacker that's 229 pounds, under 6 foot, and teams would want to know what this kid's going to run. Thing that he was probably not given enough credit for was his ability to blitz and the timing that he showed to put pressure on the quarterback. He wasn't as good as Lloyd from Utah, but this kid can really affect the quarterback when they send him on the blitz package.
What he lacks in size, he makes up for in speed.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that's impressive, we saw 5 Georgia defensive players drafted in the first round, obviously, yesterday. To me, he's been the MVP of that defense, like the leader, the guy that when you watch film, he always shows up on tape. And some guys popped this year. Last year when you watched Georgia play, he was still in the same position, making a lot of the same plays. So I really like him here at this spot for Tampa.
Yeah, imagine he goes to Tampa Bay on a Super Bowl team from a few years ago, and he's playing in front of a worse defensive front four than he did at Georgia. But, Rick, you mentioned something, 5'11", 229. Is the evolution of that position now the Darius Leonard types that we're looking for, the linebacker from San Francisco? Is that what we're looking for?
Yeah, no. They want, because I believe maybe 70% of NFL snaps now are nickel situations, and everybody's going to these 3 wide receiver sets. So pass coverage has become extremely important. I don't think there's many 2-down Mikes. Those are dinosaurs now. These are the guys that have to be athletic in coverage. And one of the, I think those other guys you mentioned are a little taller than 6 foot, but when we drafted Eric Kendricks in the second round, right around this same time, he became a heck of a football player for us, not only because of his instincts, but because he can cover as well.
I think he's solely available because he wasn't able to showcase his 40.
Yep.
I mean, when you turn the tape, I have concerns about his height, his weight, but he's a football player. He finds the football. And I understand you mentioned the massive defensive lineman that played in front of him, kept him uncovered, but he was the brains of the operation. He was the communicator on all 3 levels. So that tells me his above-the-shoulder game is so elite that he can go in and basically become a day-one starter with his knowledge of the game of football. And if you're his size, if you're 5'11", 229, 230, you better be a blazer. You look at some of the undersized linebackers that we've seen as of late that have been high draft picks, a la Devin Bush Jr., ran a significant 40 time. So those are the things that teams are looking for if you're not a 6'1", 6'2 type guy. Are you a blazer when it comes to the 40 time? Unfortunately for Nicolby, he wasn't able to showcase how fast he is when it comes to that 40.
But you know what? 3.5 in mechanical engineering, and we asked him about this at the combine, and he said, his mom said, look, you're going to school, you're not going to learn how to cut grass or something. You're going to learn to get something you can use, and he took that to heart. And teams said without fail that he picked up things so quickly, and that allows you to transition easier.
He didn't learn how to cut grass. He learned how to cut down running backs, the way this kid plays.
And I think it's so undervalued. We use that term football IQ all the time, but if you look at guys who play 7, 8, 9, 10 years in the NFL, they're guys who are smart football players. You don't have to be book smart, doesn't have to be an SAT score, but guys that pick up the system. And if you back it up with the strong academic background as well, it kind of reinforces that confidence to know this is somebody who gets it. And also about time management and just how to handle a playbook. For me, that was the biggest jump, wasn't the physicality, because playing at big time schools like he plays at Georgia, the speed isn't going to be that much of an adjustment. It's the mental adjustment. It's so many guys struggle with that leap, with the size of the playbook and the schemes, and it's your full-time job. That's the one thing I think is the least of your worries with Nicolby Dean.
So, Rick, one last question. Nicolby Dean, Cheney Tyndall, and Quay Walker. Nicolby Dean was my guy. Those guys are better athletes without question. But if you know you're having a quarterback out there, are you leaning towards Nicolby Dean, or do you want the athleticism those other guys provide?
I think they're going to look at their draft boards and what's left behind Nicolby Dean. So if there's not a lot of linebacker depth behind him on teams' draft boards, someone's going to come up here and grab him really quickly, but just because he's such a phenomenal football player. But if you're looking at your draft board and you see, well, there's 10 more linebackers that we like that would fill a need for us, but there's only one or two safeties, let's say. So so I would go up and take the safety first, knowing that I'm still going to be able to feel the need with a linebacker because of the depth of the draft in our draft board.
All right, so that's 6 Georgia players taken in the first 33 picks. With that second pick in that second round, Chris mocked out that tight end Trey McBride would also go to the Buccaneers. Just a note, Ryan Wilson has him as his 10th best available player. Let's talk about the Chicago Bears, picks 39 and 48. Their needs are at wide receiver, and then along the offensive line, Sky Moore is the guy that Trapasso has them taking. Danny, what do you think about that?
I like it a lot. I still think a player like John Mechie I like a little bit better, another player who's injured. But Sky Moore is pretty versatile as well. He's got the top-end speed that you would like to see. And that's the one thing about this wide receiver class. It's very deep. There's a lot of players here that you're going to find some great value at. The top-tier guys, the guys that went 1, 2, 3, are in a class all by themselves. But this is where you can find some value picks. I think Sky Moore is absolutely one of them.
Yeah, for me, Sky Moore ran 4.41 at the Combine. I didn't think he played that fast beyond 20 yards. Like 20 yards to the line of scrimmage, you couldn't get your hands on him, and he's going to be open all day long running those short and intermediate routes. And I love what he did at Western Michigan. That quarterback, by the way, Caleb Ellaby, is someone to keep an eye on for day 3. But I was talking to a couple teams about this. On the deep routes, he wasn't consistently getting separation. And I know he was a media darling in terms of draft Twitter over the last month or so, and I get it. But I think if you bring him as a number 3, as a slot guy, he's going to contribute right away, but you can't have the expectations that he's going to be a number 2 and just running past NFL cornerbacks all day long.
One of the things we looked at from an analytics standpoint is that first 20, and then what we called the flying 20. And the flying 20 is from the 20 to the 40 on the when you're finishing. And receivers that can't get separation deep because they're extremely quick and they go from that 0 to 60 miles per hour, what I was talking back in that first 20, but they level off as far as they have to go down the line of script, or they go down the field. So, but this kid I thought was more of a slot type kid that's going to be able to create mismatches and be a very productive receiver in the NFL.
I think that's where he's going to earn a living in the National Football League, because I have concerns when he's a perimeter pass catcher, especially against press technique. If you look at some of his games, he had issues getting off the line of scrimmage. And knowing and seeing some of the talent he played against, the talent is different. It would be more intense on the National Football League. But I think being and knowing how important the slot wide receivers are, they're basically like a number 2 guy. And nowadays, when you look at most offenses utilizing multiple sets with wide receivers, so this is a need for Chicago, no question. But you look at the laundry list of wide receivers that's available, they will have the opportunity to have the pick of the litter based on who you believe will be available when they select.
Yeah, and let's talk about the wide receivers. I mean, 6 wide receivers went in round 1. Another 6 projected to go in round 2 based on Trapasso's mock. We already have 1 off the board here. Let's talk about 3 more. Indianapolis, he has taking George Pickens. Cleveland, he has taking Christian Watson. And San Francisco, he has taking Alec Pierce. So first-time teams going deep into that wide receiver class. What do you make of that, BMAC? 6 more wide receivers drafted in that second round.
I think that was the most loaded position in the draft. When you look at the guys that came into the combine and that checked off all the boxes based on their performance at the combine and the quantity along with the quality that we're seeing, yes, 6 is definitely an ideal number. And I love George Pickens. I believe if George Pickens was healthy the entire season last year, he would have been off the board by now. I understand he might have some character concerns with him off the football field, but on the football field, he competes. He catches the football consistently. He knows how to create separation, and he plays with a lot of fire in the belly, as Pete Prisco will say. So I think if the Colts can land George Pickens, man, you look at what they already have with their young cast of wide receivers, that would be a nice mixture to add to their team.
You know what I really like about George Pickens was player dealing with injuries. He could have shut it down, said I'm going to prep for the draft. Tried to come back, made it in that championship game, did contribute there. And when he was healthy, you saw him absolutely pop on the film, was able to body up guys, had that physicality that you love to see. Alec Pierce is another one, too. Freakishly athletic kid who's, played at Cincinnati, was a big part of why that program was winning. This is where I really think there's a lot of value at this position.
And a lot of these kids, they're big now. They're all 6'3", 6'4". They all can run. They're all very athletic. So I think when you're in that draft room, you're talking about a Sky Moore, who we just talked about, and comparing him to a potential what George Pickens can be.
Yes.
Because he could have been one of the top 5 receivers in this draft if he stayed completely healthy. So now you're on Friday, you're going to take a little bit more gamble on some of these guys that have some unique athletic traits that you may be able to hit on.
Alec Pierce, another 6'3" kid. That's why Drake London went first overall over these Blazers. I think it's important, like you talk about catch radius for a quarterback. If there's a quarterback who's younger, who may be struggling, new to the system, you can screw up throwing to a guy who's 6'3", 6'4", and even though he's covered, he can body up somebody and just use his physical, skill set to kind of just make a physical, like almost throwing it into a center down low. And that can be a quarterback's best friend, especially a young quarterback who might be struggling with where to go with the football.
Yeah, we talked about Alec Pierce, 4'1", 40-inch vertical. And I asked Sauce Gardner and Brian Cook, the safety, about that, and they said that this is no surprise to us. We saw that every day at practice. But he didn't play that fast for me.
Right.
So I do wonder, you talk about you want to see a guy run, that changes your opinion, right?
Yeah, you're talking about play speed on the field and play speed in 40. And some guys don't run the 40 fast, but they play a lot faster, a la Hamilton from Notre Dame.
Exactly.
Okay, he got nailed because he ran a 4.59 at the combine, but he plays a lot faster than that. So we're going to put a lot of creed into what we saw on tape. This is the exact opposite, and I agreed with you. I think Pierce is a little bit more straight line, and he levels off. But sometimes when you watch these big guys, and you would know this, they have such a long stride. They don't look like they're running, but they're so smooth and they're covering so much ground because of the length of their stride that they actually are, what is why they run maybe a 4.41.
That's right. B-Mac, did you say Chris Henry got up on you one time in West Virginia? Who was
Chris
that?
Henry used to give me so much hell. Oh, my goodness. And the thing is, with him, he's a long strider.
Right.
So for me, I used to utilize my instincts when I'm playing off technique based on how fast you come off the line of scrimmage. The hardest part for me was going against wide receivers where everything looked the same. They never showcase a sense of urgency. So if they're not showing any sense of urgency, guess what? As a defender, I'm not going to do it either. But then they're getting up on your toes, and by that time, as Dick LeBeau used to tell us all the time, when they're even, they're leaving. I don't care how fast you are. And that's true. That's a true sentiment when you talk about playing in the secondary. When they're even, you can be a 4-1. It does not matter. They're leaving.
Team that was making their first pick in the second round, the Denver Broncos. Chris has them taking edge rusher from Michigan, David Ojabo. But we have 6 more wide receivers. Continue to be the story of the draft, according to Chris Trapasso in his latest mock. You can check it over on CBSSports.com. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Danny Kanell, Rick Spielman, Bryant McFadden, and Ryan Wilson getting us all set for that second round. And for more draft discussion and how things are shaking out, be sure to check out BMAC, Patrick Peterson on the All Things Covered podcast. Analysis, discussion, interviews with players, part of every episode. Download and follow All Things Covered wherever you get your podcast audio.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.